welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, and the last time, at least for a while, that I will do the introduction. Bob Stewart, how are you today?
Chad, it's the end of the year.
It is. It's New Year's tomorrow. Assuming
what?
Dave dropped this on the right day.
Guess what? You said this the last time you're going to do the intro for a while. Because why?
Because the Wealth Series is coming. That's right. Folks, I'm not going anywhere. Even though some of you out there are like, oh, Chad's leaving? Wait a minute. Yay. But here's what's happening. We've got the Wealth Series 2.0 starting next week. That's right. We are launching the Wealth Series 2.0. And our friend Ben Kinney, well, he always wants to do the intro when he's on the episodes, Bob. So we're going to have Ben there. How do they get registered and what should they be ready for this year?
They go to winmakegive.com/wealth. That'll get them set up for the Wealth Series so that we'll deliver it right to their inbox. winmakegive.com/wealth.
All right. And I'm challenging each and every one of you, bring at least 2 people. All right. You'll change their lives. If you went through Wealth Series 1, the original, if you did the work, something changed. Whether you has fallen off it, whatever it is, something changed though at that time. You found more wealth in your life. We're going to do it all again for you. And we want you to bring people, specifically your kids, bring them along. We want you to have them all listen either with you or heck, have them all listen on their own and then come to dinner and talk about it, right? Whatever it's going to be that you can do. Yet, Bob, before we get to the Wealth Series, which is going to start next week, I'm so excited that it's finally here and it's finally coming. And before we actually sign off today and wish everybody a happy new year, because this will be the last podcast episode of 2022, Bob, one of the things that comes along maybe with wealth, one of the things that comes along sometimes with lack of wealth, might be some self-esteem challenges, maybe some imposter syndrome feelings. And you were really, really, really wanting to dive into this. So I got to imagine you and your therapist have had a conversation recently.
Well, it's funny. A lot of we're constantly on the hunt for things we could talk about, episodes we want to do. And I don't know if you're like this, Chad, but I tend to sometimes take these from the angle of like, where do I need growth in my own life, right? And
Sure.
like in a little bit selfish manner, I'm like, I love to do episodes where I feel like when we do the research for them, sometimes it actually helps me. So This one is like, first, so you mentioned imposter syndrome, and I don't know if our audience knows what that is, but it's the idea that like sometimes you find yourself in places where people are you're leading people, they're listening to you, they're believing in you, and you don't necessarily believe in yourself in that realm.
Have you ever felt it, Bob?
Yeah, I think I battle with it like definitely every month at some point during a given month. Like I sit in my seat feeling like, man, I'm an imposter here. Like, yes, absolutely. Now the funny thing is that the next day, Chad, I might sit in that same seat doing that same thing and feel like a lot better about myself, right? And so it is this thing that for me, it ebbs and flows my self-confidence, right? And I think that imposter syndrome, that idea of like, because for me, like, I don't know, like I still sometimes today sit there and go, I don't know, like is what I'm bringing that valuable, even though I've got lots of evidence to suggest it is just something. And there's actually some things that maybe start to happen in my world, Chad, that start to lead me to be like, you know what, like I got to check myself. I got to go in and like work on my self-confidence a little bit. And sometimes it's just like in a day, I'll be like, man, I'm not feeling very confident right now. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I don't even know why. I just wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like the same person that I did yesterday, right? And so I think our self-esteem is really kind of at the core of all of this. So what I'd like to do is maybe, Chad, share with you a couple of things that like when I start to feel them, I realize like, man, I need to focus on this a little bit, and then maybe talk about some of the things that I do or some of the things that we learned that people do to work on their self-esteem.
Sounds like a plan, Bob, because I've had imposter syndrome. Everybody out there's had it. Everybody's had those ebbs and flows when it comes to our self-esteem. Let's dive into it. Let's wrap up the year on such a positive note of low self-esteem. But let's finish this, Bob, with making sure we help them improve that self-esteem.
So, like, here, one of the business units that I lead here in our world has just a Herculean challenge in front of us. And we've been beating our heads against this challenge for the better part of, let's say, 2 years. And I think we're going to do something like totally different this next year. And there's been times here recently where like I just kind of get this poor overall outlook on things, like almost feeling hopeless, right? I'm like, I don't know, this is fucking hopeless. Like we're never going to be able to solve this problem. That for me, it's like that hopelessness, right? Or that there's just no chance to do anything better here. That resignation, Chad, to the fact that like this is always going to be that way, right?
Yep.
It's one of the first signs for me that I'm like, you know what? I need to start working on like my brain a little bit, right? Like this is a solvable problem. Other companies have solved this problem. Like I don't have to solve this by myself, right? So a poor outlook is one of the first things where I start to think to myself, this is a confidence issue, right? It's a confidence issue. You ever get in that place, Chad, where just maybe it's a certain project or something where you just have a poor outlook on it?
Oh yeah, there are projects that I'll go into with not going to work. These people are crazy, right? And now it'll just never happen. Or sometimes you set a goal and no, not going to happen. Bob, poor outlook. I mean, even the most optimistic person, even the most confident person in the world, sometimes the poor outlook comes because of others, right? I'm not putting blame on others, of course. It's us having that poor outlook. Yet it's because we just don't believe in what these other people are wanting to lead or wanting to say that we say, oh, right? I mean, I don't want to get political, Bob. Let's not get into it. Yet how many people have a poor outlook on the country because it didn't go the way they voted or something like that, right? It's not even something they truly controlled, yet they're going to allow this poor outlook to now start to give them this self-esteem and self-confidence issues.
Totally. Here's another one then. You ready? And you know me well enough to know this is something I'm struggling with all the time, and probably less so when I'm feeling very confident about myself, my skills, that the priorities I'm working on are the right things. But it's trying to please others, and I think it goes maybe hand in hand with like a lack of boundaries, right? Like the lower my self-esteem gets, again, in a given week or even sometimes in a given day, the more likely I am to be trying to please others.
Yep.
Right. Or to not have some boundaries because people are coming into my world all the time saying, hey, can you help me with this? Can you do this? Can I borrow 5 minutes of your time? Do you have a half hour? Can I get on your calendar? And when my self-esteem's kind of low and I'm looking, Chad, because I'm a people pleaser, right? And so one of the ways that in theory, I can make myself feel better about myself is I can go out there and please a bunch of people and then they can give me some accolades and I can feel good.
Yes.
But the reality is it's not actually helping me. Right.
No.
And so when I find myself in this place where I'm constantly like letting people get on my calendar, doing whatever's asked of me, working on other people's priorities instead of my own, I realize, man, I'm probably getting to this place where my confidence is getting down a little bit.
Yeah, and it's definitely that boundaries thing. Obviously, the you go out of your way to attempt to please others because you think it's going to make you feel better. As you said, hey, I'm a people pleaser. Let me please other people. It'll make them happy, which then they'll say nice things to me, which will make me happy. And you're hoping that this cycle continues. Yet what ends up happening is you then end up finally going, hey, I feel awesome because I helped you people, yet I got nothing of my stuff done. And now here comes my self-esteem again because all I did was help you all day. And when you do all of that, you don't have boundaries. And it's because you're looking for the external, validation of who you are, Bob. You're looking for that outside input to help you be better. And you're attempting to just distract yourself from the things you know you should be doing to fix the situation that you're in. Now, we've all done it. Believe it or not, audience, for those of you who know me more than just a voice over your podcast, I'm actually a people pleaser. And people are like, what? No, you are not, Chad. I am. Bob, I've just gotten really good at prioritizing the people I please. Right. And I've gotten really good at putting Nita really high on that list, for example. So when someone's coming to me that I would normally just people please, I can now look at that food chain almost and say, no, if I please you, I'm taking away from pleasing Nita in this situation. I'm going to give that to the right person. Right. Just a little side note on how to help when it comes to people pleasing. Make sure you're pleasing the right people. It's the old, who do you put the mask on first? Okay, who do you put the mask on second, though? You don't just run to put it on somebody in a seat nearby. You probably put it on that most important person. Then you would put it on the next person, then the next person. if you were in that airplane example and could actually have a long enough hose to run around the plane.
All right, here's the next one that I just, when this starts to creep up, I know something's a little bit off in myself.
Okay.
And it's problems asking for what you need. And Chad, we oftentimes kind of try to tie these lessons back to our own lives, right? Sometimes our marriages or our relationships with our children or our friends or whatever. Like this one shows up in my marriage quite a bit. Like a lot of times when I'm confident, I've been a good dad, I've been an engaged partner, I've then I don't have any problem asking for what I need from my wife, from my kids, right? But sometimes when I got my self-regard's a little low, right? I feel like, you know what? I didn't show up yesterday. Like Erin she did the dinner and the dishes, right? So now my confidence is a little lower in being a great dad and a great partner. And so I might be less willing to ask for something that I need, like in my relationship, right? I think we do this at work, right? Oh gosh, I didn't, like I could have done better on that project, so I'm not going to ask for help in this project, or maybe I should know that already, right? And so I don't want to ask for help because I don't want them to think I'm an idiot, right? Like these are things that come about when we've got self-doubt around us. Yep. You ever have a problem asking for what you need?
Well, if you say ever, I'm going to have to say, of course. There's probably been a time where my life lately, no, and it's just because one of the things I've mastered are those boundaries, and I have no problem when I need help asking someone for help. When I need something specific, saying, here's what's missing, I need this. And at the same time, putting myself in that situation. Have I ever? Of course, right? There were times where, Bob, my life was upside down. I mean, I've talked about it, bankrupt, well overweight, relational situations, single dad at the time. I wouldn't turn to anybody for help. Right. I was like, this is my struggle. I didn't have the confidence to be able to say to somebody, help. Right. Or to be able to say, I need a day to myself, or I need this from you. There were plenty of times where I've done it. We've all done it at some point where we won't ask for what we need, where we won't set those boundaries, where we won't be, where we're a people pleaser and we're looking for that from other people, or we have that poor outlook. All these things that you've mentioned. Everybody's been there. I don't care who you are, how successful. Elon Musk. I mean, all these big names we hear all the time. Branson. They've all been there at some point, Bob.
I think, like Ben is a great example. I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast before, but I've definitely had conversations. I think we've talked about it on the podcast where, he's like, look, some days I get up and I'm scared to do the thing. Like, I don't want to do the thing. He even struggles with confidence. And I think it's, like, confidence is not one of these things where it's like, well, once I get to a certain level of confidence, then I'm always there and I never go backward. I mean, it's this ebbing and flowing thing that some days we wake up with more, some days, some weeks, some months, we wake up with a lot less. And it shows itself in all kinds of different
Bob,
ways.
what's the quote you like to tell your boys when it comes to courage to do something?
Oh yeah. I'd say something to the effect of that little pit you feel in your tummy, you guys. Like, all the great things in life are on the other side of that uneasiness you feel about doing that thing.
Right. And that's the difference when it comes to it. You say, Ben he'll wake up some days and he'll be like, oh, I don't even, right. Okay. He's just mastered I got to overcome that feeling in my stomach. Now, are there days where sometimes that is a gigantic monster literally standing at the door that we can't get past? Yes. Right. We all have those days. I don't care who we are. We're all going to have days like this. Everybody out there, you've had a low self-esteem day. What we're just hoping for, Bob, is that we can lead them before this episode is over to some tips, tricks, strategies, so that low self-esteem day doesn't become a low self-esteem week, which doesn't become a low self-esteem month, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, let's do it. Let's jump in. Here's some tactics, some things that I do, some things that people way smarter than me suggest that you do.
Well, Bob, before we get into the tips,
okay,
right? I just want to talk about some of the things that low self-esteem, that imposter syndrome feeling can do, right? Obviously, it can lead us to having extreme stress, which then, of course, cycles and makes it worse. It can lead to anxiety, which to me is very similar to stress in that regard. Eating disorders, panic disorders. It can lead us to substance abuse, right? Where we just say, I need that drink just to calm myself a little bit. And then before we know it, it's been a week of, I need a third drink to calm myself, right? So folks, become really careful when you're seeing these low self-esteems. And that's why Bob wanted to make sure when we started this, I was like, Bob, this sounds depressing, right? But you wanted to make sure we pointed out some of those indicators so you can see them, recognize them, and then say, whoa, time out. What are the tip strategies that I can use? Because who knows what they can lead to.
Yeah, I mean, look, some of that stuff you read, like substance abuse and panic disorders and, you know, eating disorders and anxiety and stress. I mean, those are like killers, right? Like
Yes.
these are things that take years off our life in some cases. And I think like when they happen over long periods of time and we don't recognize them and we don't try to do anything different, like that's where they really start to take, I mean, they literally take time off your life.
Yes. So, Bob, we've got it, right? I mean, we've got low self-esteem. We caught the bug, whatever it is, whatever brought us on. A lot of times a failure triggers a kick of low self-esteem, right? And then we end up in, okay, what is something we can do that's going to help us cope with, stop the downward spiral and move upward? Because I always say to people, when I have the pleasure of coaching them, I always say the first thing you have to do is stop digging, right? I'm in this hole and I keep getting deeper. Okay, well, stop digging. That's step one. Then we'll work on getting you out of it. So, Bob, what are some ways we can cope?
So here's this is one that I do quite often. It's pretty, I don't know, it's like cliche in some ways, but it's just focus on something positive and hopeful.
Yes.
Or focus on something in the past that you've done that's really difficult that you accomplished. Right? It doesn't always have to be like, a lot of times people think hope. They think like something in the future I want to do that I haven't yet, but I believe I can. Right?
Sure.
But to me, like hope can also be found in like things I've done in the past that were really hard and I got through and completed them. I have this stupid thing. I go back to it a lot in my head.
Not a stupid thing, Bob. Don't justify it.
It's like in the arc of my life, it's kind of insignificant, except that one of my coaches in high school, and this is 25, 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago in high school, we used to run this drill that was like almost impossible to complete. Right. Or you believed at the beginning of the year that this was a drill that nobody was capable of doing. Right. And then by the end of the year, at least in your first year in his program, right, all of a sudden you could do that thing. But it took you the entire year to get there to be able to do this certain exercise. And it was a conditioning exercise, right? Okay. That, you know, the first time I ever did it, I was literally throwing up.
So it's like do 100 burpees. Nobody can do that.
Yeah, totally. It's like this back and forth across the gym basketball thing. And honestly, like there's a name for it that our coach gave it, but it was so traumatic for me that I've scrubbed the name from my brain.
Sounds like suicide drills to me.
Yeah, that's exact suicide. That might be the name. Yeah, suicide drills. That's exactly what it is. Some variation of that. And you know, the first time I ever did it, I puked. I think the fifth time I ever did it, I puked, Chad. Like it was one of those things where I just could not. But by the end of that first year being in that program, I could do it. Right. And then I got to be the one that got to watch the other kids next year come in and puke and think they were never going to get there, but then watch them do it too. And I go back to that time in my life a lot when my confidence is low. Right. Because I didn't think I could do it. When I was leaning over that garbage can puking the first 5 days I did that thing, in my head, there was never an end to that.
Yep.
But now with the benefit of looking back, I can say, man, that was a really hard thing. I remember exactly how I felt sitting over that garbage can, but I also remember what it felt like by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So focused on something hopeful or positive, for me, that's often been going back to something that just reminds me that I'm capable.
You know, Bob, I have a whole chapter on it in the book, Achieve Your Apex. I wrote a whole chapter called Wear Your Trophies Proudly. Right. And I have many of these things. It's a stupid little thing. I have a small scar from stitches on my knuckle that came from a glass that was fresh out of the wash and dryer at the restaurant I worked at, that when I went to pick it up, literally split and cut me and I needed 2 stitches. Right. But I was leading in a contest we were having. That's why I was going so fast and grabbed the glass that was too hot. I went and got the stitches. I came back and finished my shift and won the contest. Right. So just something like this little scar is something that when I need a little something, I can be like, damn, I I can do anything, right? I have a tattoo that reminds me from my marathon that I first ran. I have a medals that hang around my office or other pictures of events. Folks, fill your environment, and that literally can be your person, with these little things that will help you focus on hopeful thoughts. Because like Bob is saying, hopeful doesn't have to be, oh, I hope this works out. I hope I make X amount this year. I hope she says yes no, it doesn't have to be that. Hopeful thoughts can be looking back and remembering the successes that you've had already, which will immediately mentally take you back there and give you the confidence boost that you have from that accomplishment. And yes, audience, I have tattoos.
Let's see them.
Later, Bob.
Just kidding.
Yeah, it's not a visual opportunity here for everybody on the podcast. So,
all right, here'll be the next thing I do, Chad, when I'm starting to feel like some of those things I talked about earlier are starting to creep into my world. Sometimes I just go looking for a friend. And look, and sometimes that's
you. Do you have to look far, Bob?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes that's Ben.
Yep.
Sometimes that's my wife.
Yep.
Right. Sometimes that's my therapist.
Sure.
I talk about her. Glenda is her name, right? Sometimes that's her. Like, I just go and look, I'd say maybe 8 years ago, I didn't have any of these. I had these people around me, but I didn't use them.
Yep.
Right. I didn't use them. I was going to do it all myself. I was not willing to be vulnerable with anybody about my insecurities. And what I've found in the last probably 8 years, let's say, since I've really started working with Ben closely and really starting to think about the person I want to be, not just being happy with the person I was, like, I've started to use those people when I'm not feeling, my on my A game.
Yep.
Right. And look, sometimes it's like with Ben, it's generally a little bit of tough love, right? Same with my wife. With my therapist, it's a little bit of, she's asking me to be introspective. With my buddy Tavish, it's just an ear to listen to and some pat you on the back support, right? Like, I know the different people in my world that I can go to for the different types of support I might need. And when I'm really not feeling confident, I'm going to make a loop around all of those people, right? Because I need a little bit of tough love. I need a little bit of the hey, you're doing awesome from my buddy who'd never criticize. I need a little bit of the help with the introspection that my therapist helps with, right? So could be a pastor, could be some mentor, teacher,
teammate,
right? Partner, right, Chad? It's why Ben is so big on partnering in business, because you have these people that you can go to get honest feedback. Anybody you're thinking of in your world that you lean on that wouldn't have been covered by one of those
without name dropping, right? I mean, that's what it would be. It would be just giving shout outs to some people, and then someone would be like, "Hey, you forgot me," right? There's tons of them. Some of my coaching clients, right? Sometimes the conversation that I'm having with them is really for me, right? Sometimes it's going to be Nita. Sometimes it's going to be my mom. Sometimes it's going to be my high school buddies that are still, some of my best friends, and we don't see each other, or I don't see them often because many of them still live near each other. But a simple text to the group text, and all of a sudden you got all the support you possibly need, who are there for you, or people who are going to, lend you an ear, or we'll get on the podcast a few minutes early before we start recording. And, folks, you need a network, right? It doesn't mean you have to hang out with these people every day if that's not what you're looking for, but you need a network in your life, Bob, because there's always people who are ready to put you down around the world. Find the people who are ready to pick you up.
Here, I'm going to give
any other things that you do. So you find people, right? You reflect or focus on positive experiences or things to come. Anything else Bob Stewart does that our audience could also say, yeah, I could do that too?
So I have a gratitude journal.
Yep. Okay.
Like I've got a whole bunch of journals. Chad, you can see it. I've got, we have in Place is the name of our company. So I've got this, I Found My Place journal. I probably have like 15 of these around my desk in my house, but one of them just has in it things that I'm grateful for. And there are some days I go in there and I write 15 things in there. And there's some weeks that I don't write anything in there. And it's not that I'm not grateful for anything during those weeks. It's just, I generally go to that gratitude journal when I'm feeling my confidence is a little low, or I'm not having the best positive self-talk, right? I will go in there and it's not to like go write 15 more things. It's to go look at the things I've written before. Chad, right? And generally when I'm in there, I'll jot a few down. And if you were to read back through that thing, some of those, there's certain things I have in there 12 different times, right? Just like today I decided again, it's not like I check back and go, have I ever written down that I'm really thankful that my wife is such an amazing mother? Like, I don't care if I've written it down before, I'm going to write it down again today if I'm thinking about it. And so for me, like sometimes when my confidence gets down, I'll go back into that thing and I'll look for positive, like things I have that are pretty darn good, right? That I'm pretty darn thankful for, just to kind of reset my brain and get out of that woe is me mentality.
You know, Bob, one great thing that everybody can do, and we talk about this over on the 15-point plan, our sister podcast, or our spin-off podcast, as I guess it would be, that Jolene and I get to host. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. Ben Kinney built a 15-point plan. We've talked about it back on season 1, which is what spurred the kickoff spin-off episodes. Volunteer to help other people, Bob. Because when you're focused on others, you won't be focused on you anymore, and you'll walk away from it with the endorphin hit and rush of being able to help some other people. It's almost that people please, right? I go to find other people for that external validation for myself. Go volunteer, because it'll take you out of your own head and it'll put you in the situation of helping others and where they are in life, and you'll start to feel gratitude that comes along with that as well.
Absolutely. How about this? Stay physically active. Like I know sometimes when I'm getting down, Chad, I will just I've been doing this. I'll just get out there and I'll do those burpees today. Right. And sometimes just coming out of that, I'm like, okay.
Dare I ask
like
how many you're up to in front of the audience?
No. There's the endorphins that are in your head, right? You're like a little bit out of breath. I'm like for at least that 5 minutes, I didn't think about anything else but that next burpee, right? Like it resets my head. It gives me some literal like physical endorphins. It just makes me feel better about myself.
Absolutely. But I mean, I'm glad you took that one off this little list you'd put together for us. Because I know when you wrote it, you said, all right, Chad, this is going to be one I know you're going to dive in on, right? So I'm glad you took exercise because that obviously does the endorphins. And it's one of the reasons that I'm literally working out, Bob, before I'm fully awake in the morning. I mean, I'm in the gym and I'm into a few reps or a mile on the bike or whatever before I'm fully aware of everything that's happening around me, really, because it's just part of the routine I've built, the habit I've formed. And then it brings that feeling of positive, self-esteem. I don't care if you're last on the Peloton leaderboard, right? For those of you who have the Peloton, because I know so many people have it, they don't want to get on it because I don't do well. I'm always so low. Shut the leaderboard. Realize the fact that, okay, Bob didn't even get on the bike today. So you might be number 1,000th out of, 1,001 on the leaderboard, but you're still 1,000 out of the 7 billion on the planet that day that are sitting around. That's pretty good, right? So think about it in the right way when it comes to it. Bob, another one that would be on this would be just do something that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Right? I've taken up a new hobby. I've taken up the hobby of cooking, right? I'm cooking, I'm baking, I'm grilling. I'm taking it all to the next level. I've said, I want to be really good at this. Not that I'm going to become a chef, but I just want to be good at it. So Nita and I can eat what we want and stuff like that. And it makes me feel good. So if I'm in the kitchen for a while cooking something, it just makes me feel good. I'm going to come out of it, even if the food tasted crappy, with some confidence because I have that feeling of positive while I'm going through the experience.
I haven't been doing this recently because I live in Washington and it friggin' rains every day here, at least this time of year. But when Aaron and I lived in Arizona, I had taken golf up, and I've golfed my whole life, but I was like taking lessons, and I had a little membership at a local area. I could go down there and hit golf balls. And I would get to points in my day where I'm like, man, I need a break. And I would go and I would hit golf balls. And just, I don't know, for me, there was some rhythm in there and it was something I enjoyed, right? I was also practicing a bunch, so I was getting better at it. So it was like something that I felt like I was getting good at, and I could see improvement in it, Chad. Yep. These were all things that like fed my confidence. And, I was 40 years old at that time. So for me, and I've been golfing, by the way, wrong, like a shitty golfer for 22 years to that point, or however long it had been, right? 27 years. I think I started golfing at 13. And so I was also like learning the right way to do something, which was proving to me that I had the capacity to like learn something new at 40, right?
Yep.
Even like relearn something that I originally learned the wrong way, learn it the right way at 40. So it was like there was a lot of things that I kind of helped me around that new skill. It was something I enjoyed. It's something. It was a little bit of physical activity, probably not as much as you'd like to have seen, but man, go out and swing a golf club, 400 times, and tell me if you didn't get a little bit of, get that heart rate up a little bit.
Sure. Folks,
You know,
Tiger Woods is in great shape, right? Don't judge your health and health goals and health activities by Chad, audience. Please do not, right? Because
there's another one of the things that came off this list is like just literally keeping in mind that idea that everyone makes mistakes. Go out on a golf course, you can see guys hit 300-yard drives, and the next drive they shank one off to the right, and you're like, okay, everybody makes mistakes. Like,
Bob, along the lines of everyone makes mistakes, you've heard the expression "forgive and forget," right?
Yeah.
Don't forget, forgive, and forgive yourself, right? If you're in one of those moments where you need to, just stop and say, hey, me, I forgive you. That doesn't mean you have to forget what you did, because hopefully you're a learning-based person. If you're listening to the podcast, you're a learning-based person. You want to learn, you want to grow, you want to improve. So, okay, don't forget what you did, learn from it. Yet forgive yourself for what you did and the way that you're allowing that to make you feel, and put yourself in a position of saying, I forgive me. It'll allow you to release that, to then get that weight off. And now you can start to move forward. Because you know what? Even if your sail isn't up on a ship, if the anchor is cut away, you're still going to move. You might not move as fast or the direction you want, yet you're going to move. So sometimes that forgiveness is cutting that anchor, Bob, and letting your boat start to drift.
Chad, I think there's probably there's a million more things that we could talk about here around the idea of self-esteem. I guess here's why I want to do this episode. I think that there are people out there that look around at others that are doing big things, that are making lots of money, that are building big organizations, people like Ben Kinney, right?
Yep.
And they think, man, this guy's so confident. No, every single one of us, Chad, Elon Musk, you said, like all of us at some point struggle with the idea of are we worthy of the praise? Are we good enough to lead these people? Are we, like, all of us? Now, some of us, like Ben, right, we get to a place where more often than not, we're not mired in these thoughts. But even him, I know him well, even him gets into these places where those thoughts are more prevalent than not on certain days, right? And these are some of the tactics and the strategies for Ben. It might be heading out into the woods and recharging, or it might be reading a good book, right? It might be going and he leans into a lot of the mentors he has. He does all these things that we've talked about in some way to recharge that battery, to make sure that, look, as much as I can, that my self-confidence is high rather than low.
Sure. And think about after recording an episode, whether it's just you and I recording together, whether it's an interview with a guest, or whether it was while we were together all recording the wealth series to get it ready for everybody. How many times did we finish a recording and one person says, was that okay? Was that good? Right? Was that bad? I mean, and even Ben will get on and he'll be like, I don't know. Was that a good episode? Right? And what is he doing? He's getting that outside support. He's getting Dave to say, yeah, you guys were, that was fantastic. Or then we end up hearing from our audience, you guys, that was fantastic. And we're sitting here going, yeah, was it our best? No. Right? Yet, folks, there's always, everybody is having those moments of doubt. Everybody is having those moments of imposter syndrome and that low self-esteem. And we hope we've given you a few things. Bob, you mentioned a whole list of things there, from staying active, thinking about something that you're good at, keeping a gratitude journal. We said volunteer. You said, remember, everyone makes mistakes. Just do anything that makes you feel good. Forgive yourself. And of course, do something that just recharges yourself. Care for yourself. You just gave the example, like Ben likes to get out into the woods and go hike, that sort of thing to help us. Bob, self-esteem is so important and so many people are challenged with it. It's just a matter of, do you stay in that rut or do you get back out of it when you're feeling it?
It's not even so many, like you said, so many people. I think we all are, unless you're like a crazy megalomaniac or you've got one of the disorders on the chart, right? Like if you're full-time 100% always confident, like there's probably something a little bit off with you. I think we all struggle. All of us sane individuals struggle with this at some point to some degree. And again, like you said earlier, the trick is not getting mired in this for too long, right? Having a way to pull yourself out of it and ground yourself that look, you are capable and you do have the confidence in yourself. It's confidence, Chad, I think more than anything can move you a long ways in this world. But the flip side of that is a lack of confidence or a lack of self-esteem can drag you down pretty fast. And so it can go in either direction. So you called it an anchor or a sail. I love it.
Yeah, Bob, thank you so much for bringing this topic to us. I was a little nervous coming into it. I was like, all right, but I think this is a great way to wrap up 2022, right? Great with saying, hey, folks, we've all been there. We're all going through it. Here's some tips to help you come 2023, right? Here's those things for you to do. Now, Bob, we don't just bring them tips on self-esteem, self-confidence. We're going to bring them tips on so many things in 2023. And we're going to start it with bringing them tips on building wealth. That's right. Bob, how do they become a part of the Wealth Series? And folks, if you don't know the answer to this yourself right now, you haven't been paying attention.
winmakegive.com/wealth. Go in there, throw your email address in. We'll send you the first episode on January 2nd. This is the last time you're going to hear it, though, because this is the last episode of 2022. First episode of 2023 will be Wealth Series Part 2, or as Chad is referring to it, 2.0. Chad,
folks,
take us out of here.
We want to help you get where you're going next year, and we're going to start it with a bang by starting with the Wealth Series. Make sure you've joined. There are handouts. Why do you need to register? You're sitting there and you're saying, Chad, I don't need to register. I listen to the podcast. I'm already subscribed. Because you can't win the money that's being given away if you don't do the homework. And the only way to get the homework sent to you is to go register at winmakegive.com/wealth, where you'll get all the handouts sent to you so you can do the homework and you can be eligible to win Ben Kinney's money. Folks, until then, Bob, I want to wish you a happy new year. I know you want to wish our audience a happy new year. Ben would if he's here today. Dave would if Dave is here in theory, yet he just never speaks. Folks, from behalf of the Win, Make, Give team and the whole Win, Make, Give podcast network, we want to wish you a happy, safe New Year's, and we want to welcome you to 2023 with a bang. Until then,
where's my champagne?
Always,
what's going on here? There's no champagne in this podcast room.
Do good.